Sacred Cross commands you.
Burn it down!
Be good!
Skilled in dark magic, drinking, gambling, and all sorts of vices, he travels to heaven and hell, facing dangerous situations, walking the line between life and death. Today, we bring you the thrilling superhero series Constantine. The show opens with Constantine in a psychiatric hospital. He volunteers for the most brutal treatments to use the pain to torment himself and release inner tension. Due to a tragedy involving his teammates, Constantine is known as the Damned Constantine. Despite hiding in the hospital, he remains a magnet for trouble, attracting countless unusual events. This time, he follows a trail of cockroaches and discovers a woman possessed by a demon. Constantine chants an exorcism spell. The possessed person suddenly levitates. Constantine forces the opponent to the ground. As his chanting speeds up, nearby glass shatters. When the woman wakes up, she's back to normal, but the demon leaves a message for Constantine. Liv will die soon. The scene shifts to Liv, a regular woman who doesn't understand why a malevolent spirit wants to harm her. As Liv drives home, her rear-view camera malfunctions, continuously alerting despite nothing being behind her. She stops to check, and her car suddenly shuts off, making her anxious as everything around her loses power. Liv, now slightly worried, starts walking home. Just then, the ground cracks, creating a deep hole that nearly swallows her. At that moment, Constantine arrives in a taxi. Liv, wary, grabs a pepper spray can. Constantine quickly explains he's not a threat but her only savior. Without his help, she won't survive more than 3 days. She takes his exorcist business card and flees. Later, Constantine descends into the hole, finding no demon but an angel named Manny. Manny didn't cause the hole, he's just visiting an old friend. Constantine isn't very welcoming, ignoring Manny. Manny tells Constantine that something big is about to happen. As Constantine tries to ask more, Manny spreads his wings and flies away. When Liv returns to her apartment complex, she notices someone watching her. This person sneaks around, carving a symbol on her door with a dagger. The hallway lights flicker, and a demon chases Liv to her apartment, but she escapes. Her neighbor isn't so lucky. In the middle of the night, an ambulance siren wakes Liv. She's shocked to find her neighbor has died horribly. There's a symbol carved on Liv's door, but the real mystery lies ahead. As a driver heads down the road, he hears noises from the back of his vehicle. He stops to check and witnesses a terrifying sight, a corpse writhing madly. Early the next morning, Constantine tracks Liv. She shows him a photo of the symbol on her door. Liv suspects the person who killed her neighbor and carved the symbol was her stalker, who turns out to be Constantine's driver, Chales. In reality, if Chales hadn't carved that protective symbol on her door, Liv would have been the one dead that night. Constantine deduces that demons are hunting her because of her father. Liv believes her father died before she was born. Constantine reveals that he knows her father died last year, leaving her an inheritance. Just then, a car crashes into a roadside restaurant. If Constantine hadn't been talking to her, Liv would have been killed inside the restaurant. This time, Liv believed Constantine's words were true. A demon was chasing her. The driver of the car was the neighbor who died last night. This level of strangeness was beyond Liv's imagination. Knowing this had something to do with her father, Liv immediately went home to ask her mother about him. Her mother revealed that she and Liv's father had only a one-night stand, and she got pregnant and had Liv, making her believe her father died early on. Liv looked at her father's keepsake, confused about what was happening. When she looked up, she saw her grandmother. Terrified, she ran away and met Constantine across the street. Seeing her panic, he told her to take off the necklace. He chanted a spell, and suddenly, everything went dark, and many people appeared. Constantine stood on the tracks, holding Liv's hand to keep her from moving. When a train passed through them, Liv realized what she saw was an illusion. Her father was a psychic who had helped Constantine a lot. Liv inherited her father's abilities. When she touches the necklace, she starts to have spiritual awareness. That's why demons target her. Constantine decided to take Liv to her father's house to hide. On the way, they had an accident, and a truck hit them. In his days, Constantine saw his biggest regret, failing an exorcism that led to a girl named Astra being dragged to hell. Constantine always felt guilty. Liv's scream woke him. In front of them, an electric cable writhed like a snake, attacking them. Constantine chanted a spell to control the cable and save Liv, but Chales was impaled by the cable. Constantine wasn't too distressed. When they reached Liv's father's house, He urgently searched through books for clues and discovered the demon chasing Liv was Lucifer. This demon could control lightning and electricity, manipulating the electrical currents within living beings to control corpses. Liv followed Constantine's instructions, smearing blood on a map. The blood stopped at a specific spot, showing where a supernatural event would occur. But first, Constantine had to deal with Lucifer. Then Liv could handle the rest. Constantine visited an old friend, a talented hacker named Richie. Although Richie didn't like Constantine, he helped him deal with Liv's situation. When Constantine returned to Liv's father's house, Chales suddenly appeared, frightening Liv. It seemed Chales wasn't an ordinary person. If he didn't have the power to resurrect, he couldn't withstand Constantine. Constantine found a tall building, bribed the guard to get to the rooftop, and drew a magic circle to confront Lucifer. Shortly after, the lights flickered, signaling something was about to happen. Lucifer didn't appear but possessed the guard, walking towards them. When the guard stepped into the magic circle, Constantine chanted a spell. Unexpectedly, Lucifer broke free from the human body, transforming into Constantine's form and mocking that he would soon be banished to hell. Then, Lucifer started draining all the city's electricity. It seemed Constantine's magic circle was powerless against Lucifer, so Constantine fired a flare. Seeing it, Richie hacked the electrical system, cutting power to the whole city. Constantine then burned the magic circle to unleash its power. Realizing he couldn't resist, Lucifer returned to hell, bringing up an illusion of Astra to threaten Constantine, saying activating the magic circle would doom Astra. Liv realized Astra was just an illusion. Furious, Constantine chanted a spell, summoning flames to drag Lucifer to hell. Although it was just an illusion of Astra, Constantine felt immense sorrow, collapsing on the ground while Richie took Liv home. On the way, Richie explained Astra's story to Liv. Years ago, the girl was possessed by a demon, and Constantine summoned a stronger demon to save her. But the demon tore Astra apart, dragging her soul to hell. This guilt changed Constantine forever. At this moment, a police siren interrupted their conversation. Ahead, a house was on fire. Liv checked and found it was the spot marked by the blood on the map. The next day, Constantine received a special map. That night, Liv researched the strange events and marked them on the map, but the number of marks was unusual. Meanwhile, Manny visited Constantine, revealing his mission to watch over him. Constantine didn't understand why heaven and hell kept coming to him. Was it because he was the hell detective? Liv gave Constantine her marked map, asking him to handle everything. Episode 2. In a town in Pennsylvania, the residents mainly relied on mining for a living. One day, a coal contractor complained to his wife that all the workers were about to quit. Due to strange sounds underground, the workers were hesitant to continue mining and wanted to quit, causing a major headache for the contractor. While taking a shower, the water suddenly turned into oil. Before he could react, flames erupted and burned him alive. Shortly after, Constantine arrived in the town. A girl was sketching his portrait, muttering to herself, asking who he was. As soon as he stepped outside, Constantine bumped into her. Jet, having finally met the man of her dreams, didn't want to let him go. Without hesitation, Constantine pierced the eyes in the drawing. In the sunlight, his eyes sparkled like a hero's. When Jet looked back, Constantine had disappeared, and she had stolen his wallet. After avoiding Jet, Constantine headed to a local bar to investigate a recent house fire. While drinking with the miners, they shared a rumor. Years ago, a mining accident killed 9 people. It said they dug too deep, as if searching for hell. They heard continuous knocking underground, and now, the devil had burned the contractor alive. Hearing this, Constantine immediately went to the mine. Pressing his ear to the wall, he indeed heard knocking. Suddenly, the ground shook violently, and he had to flee. Later, he visited the contractor's house. After examining the traces inside, the contractor's wife called out to him. Constantine pretended to be a reporter, noting the coal dust on her hand, and asked a few questions. She said she hadn't known her husband's job was so dangerous when they married. If she'd known, she wouldn't have married him. She then tried to seduce Constantine with his tie. After he rejected her, she angrily threw him out. Outside, the contractor's workers surrounded him, questioning if he was really a reporter. Unafraid, Constantine knocked out 2 of them, but got punched in the face. At this point, he revealed he was an exorcist investigating the spiritual events surrounding the contractor's death. Hearing this, the leader quickly chased him away. Back at the hotel, Constantine found Jet waiting. Seeing her persistence, he didn't chase her away but wasn't friendly either. People around him always ended up suffering, so he usually pushed them away. Jet believed meeting Constantine was destiny. When she took his hand, she felt his torment, pain, despair, and loneliness. Feelings that drove Constantine forward. Realizing Jet's strong psychic abilities, Constantine decided to ask for her help, handing her the tainted items he collected from the fire scene. She immediately sensed the flames and saw a huge cross. Constantine then left her and headed alone to an abandoned local church. There, he heard strange noises. It turned out to be a couple making out. But when he turned around, he saw drawings on the wall. Using his blood to guide him, he chanted spells and indeed saw a shadowy figure. That night, Jet went to the bar and struck up a conversation with the man next to her, who used to be a priest. After his son died, he left the church and drowned his sorrows in alcohol. His son had died in last year's mining accident. They drank until the next morning. When Jet returned home, she found Constantine lying on the couch. After returning from the church, Constantine believed in Jet's psychic abilities and decided to recruit her to his exorcism team. But Jet refused. Constantine introduced himself, and Jet explained her situation but didn't trust him enough to reveal anything more. Suddenly, an alarm interrupted their conversation. The town's mine had collapsed. When Constantine arrived at the scene, the miners had already been brought out. Many had heard knocking in the mine. So Constantine got into the mining supervisor's car, wanting to know what had happened to the mine. Years ago, the mining area was declared depleted. Then, an oil company came and helped the mine flourish again. Constantine learned that these people had entered an area where humans should not go. If the mine wasn't shut down, things would get worse. Just then, the car doors automatically locked, oil poured inside, and a black hand emerged, engulfing both men. In the nick of time, Jet arrived and broke the car door, saving them, but the supervisor didn't survive. On the way back, Constantine explained to Jet that the knocking sound in the oil mine was caused by dark spirits, the souls of the dead miners. They were knocking on the walls to warn everyone. These spirits wouldn't appear outside and wouldn't harm humans. Constantine speculated that someone was manipulating them, so the two went to the bar to gather information. Jet remembered the priest who had been drinking with her. Constantine suspected he had the power to command spirits to avenge his son. Jet sat in the chair where the priest had sat, and when she closed her eyes, she saw a waterfall and a camping tent. This must be the campsite. They immediately went there and indeed found the priest. After confirming his identity, Constantine began chanting a spell. But before he could finish, the priest continued it. The priest had guessed why Constantine was there, but he wasn't the one behind the incidents. After abandoning his faith, the priest lost his powers, and chanting spells was useless. However, he provided an important clue. The victims were all prominent figures in the oil industry, and the only survivor was the big boss. Additionally, the boss didn't believe in ghosts and had gone to the mine with his son to see if it was as scary as the miners claimed. He was frightened by the spirits, but fortunately, Constantine arrived in time and used his spells to reveal the true nature of the spirits. The boss didn't survive, but his son did, which was a stroke of luck. After this event, Jet understood Constantine's work, and they began to reconcile. The priest also blew up the mine to avenge his son. That night, Constantine visited the contractor's wife. He saw coal dust on the boss's body, similar to the dust on her hands. This was a trace of the spirit, and the wife didn't hide it, summoning a spirit to confront Constantine. It turned out that this woman had learned exorcism from a Romani. Although she had never succeeded before, her powers had recently grown stronger. She had killed others to take over the mine, but forgot that her husband was also a miner. Constantine summoned her husband's spirit, pulling her down into the ground, and the other spirits disappeared with her. Unlike Liv, Jet wasn't afraid of trouble. After this incident, she decided to join Constantine's team. After wrapping everything up, Constantine was exhausted and immediately fell asleep, ignoring Jet. Episode 3. A woman sneaks into an abandoned store filled with animal carcasses, radiating a dark aura. She takes a strange record from a wall cabinet, then goes to a recording studio and gives it to a musician named Bernie, asking him to analyze the sound frequency to determine if it's real or fake. Despite the woman's warnings not to listen directly, Bernie puts on headphones and listens. Suddenly, the room fills with a chilling air. Bernie's hands freeze, and he stabs himself with a pen, dying instantly. The next day, Chad finds Constantine by intuition, only to see him covered in blood, dancing wildly. It seems Constantine is on the verge of madness. Chad takes Jet for a walk around the area. It's not very large, but has a secret tunnel. Behind a small door is a hallway leading to hell. Constantine doesn't dare go deeper, but Jet, unafraid of anything, still wants to help him solve supernatural cases. A musician who knew Constantine had died mysteriously, and the location was marked as a red dot on the map. When Jet touched the map, she felt a chill. Therefore, Constantine determined Bernie's death wasn't an accident. They immediately went to the local morgue in Chicago. Constantine had once been the lead singer in a rock band, and Bernie had recorded their only album. Now the two were separated by death. Using magic, Constantine lit 5 fingers, briefly reviving the dead. Indeed, after Constantine chanted a spell, the corpse in the morgue moved. Bernie woke up, saying a record had killed him. After searching, they discovered the Mooney record, made over 70 years ago. The company's boss was still alive and might know something. Constantine turned his ID card into an official badge to visit Mr. Mooney in the hospital. As soon as Constantine spoke, Mr. Mooney knew which record he was referring to. Mooney recounted that a famous singer had sold his soul to the devil for inspiration. One day, the recording room's temperature dropped suddenly, and the singer was devoured by the devil. The record captured the devil's voice. When Mooney held the record, he felt a chilling sensation and hid it in a cabinet. Recently, a detective visited. Wanting to buy the record, Mooney felt an icy chill as if the devil was inside. So he hid the record, but the detective, who signed his check as Fell, was looking to buy it. Fell was Bernie's most famous rock star client. Constantine suspected Fell might have made a deal with the devil for fame. Meanwhile, the woman who had taken the record to Bernie brought it home and hid it on a bookshelf. Her daughter, curious, took it down when her mother left. Soon after, Constantine broke into Fell's house, forcing him to confess about his deal with the devil. Fell was clueless. At that moment, his wife Jasmine pointed a gun at Constantine, admitting she was the one who made the deal. She then shared her story. Years ago, Jasmine sold her soul to the devil to save her husband. Constantine read the demonic contract and saw that Jasmine's soul was due soon. The soul broker had asked her to use the record in exchange for her soul, leading to Bernie's death. They planned to trade tonight. Constantine went to the meeting place to confront the broker. After Constantine left, Jasmine and her husband discovered their daughter had opened the record, but fortunately, they saved her in time. In the dark room, Constantine found Jasmine's soul broker, but he was just an employee, not the mastermind. Constantine knew this person, an exorcist named Manny. Constantine was ashamed of Manny for deceiving women, but during the interrogation, Constantine was caught off guard and knocked unconscious by Manny's henchmen. When Constantine woke up, he found himself tied up in an abandoned factory. Manny was determined to obtain the record that night because in the hands of a sorcerer, it would become a dangerous weapon, and he didn't want Constantine to have it. Manny cut Constantine's hand and then placed a vial of blood-stopping medicine nearby. If Constantine managed to escape, the vial would save him. Meanwhile, Jet, worried about Constantine's delay, called Chales for support. Soon after, 2 thugs broke into Jasmine and Fell's house. They were Manny's henchmen, sent to retrieve the record. Not wanting trouble, Jasmine handed it over. The thugs, influenced by the record, started playing the music. Constantine was found by a homeless man, and he transformed a card into a credit card to ask the man for help. However, the man attempted to kill Constantine for the card. Fortunately, Jet, using her psychic abilities, found Constantine's location and rescued him in time. Their immediate task was to find the record. If it was played in public, the consequences would be disastrous. But it was too late. The thugs had already played the record in a nightclub, resulting in a bloody tragedy. When Chales arrived with food, the 3 discovered a deaf man who had survived. The man said he saw 2 men play a record, and then everyone died. Constantine believed that Manny wasn't responsible, but rather the demon in the record had compelled someone to play it in a crowded place. Constantine saw an illusion of a white tiger, and Chales noticed a poster for the university radio station featuring a white tiger. The 3 drove to the university. Constantine wore headphones and played music at full volume to find the radio station. Chales and Jet were in charge of cutting off the power, but the switch room was locked. Chales crashed a car into it, but the record was still playing in the broadcast room. Constantine accidentally dropped his headphones and was in immense pain. Just then Manny, wearing ear protection and armed with a gun, appeared. He shot the music player, saving everyone. The thug who had played the record fired back. Constantine cast a spell to trap him in the room. The spell summoned the demon from the record, which killed the thug and took the record back to hell. Manny, seeing the record taken away, could do nothing. That night, Constantine forced the soul broker to Jasmine's house. Fell could regain Jasmine's soul if he gave up his health. Hearing this, Fell sacrificed his health to redeem his wife's soul. By swallowing the broker's contract, the deal was nullified. Constantine saved another family, but became Manny's enemy. Episode 4: A mentally unstable traveler was preparing to clear customs in the United States. Noticing his addiction, the staff handed him over to the police. The police rolled up his sleeves and saw needle marks. Despite the traveler's pleas, they opened a jar he was carrying, releasing countless insects that entered the officers' bodies. Unaware of these events, Constantine was training his psychic abilities with Jet. They discovered hidden powers within themselves. Later, when Constantine entered a warehouse, he found someone had broken in before him. Inside, they found many insects crawling on the floor. The addict, Gary, an old friend of Constantine's, was levitating. This was Jet's first time hearing Gary's name, sparking her curiosity. Constantine asked Gary why he was there. Not long ago, Gary had overdosed and passed out, waking up in Sudan, Africa. There, he encountered a boy whose body had been used to seal a demon. Feeling pity, Gary used magic to trap the demon in a jar, but the jar had now broken. Possessed, the police officer stormed into a restaurant, gorging on food and terrifying everyone. He plunged his hand into boiling oil to retrieve French fries, ate them, and then collapsed, releasing a swarm of insects. Upon learning that Gary had brought a demon, Constantine used King Solomon's ring to inscribe a spell on a glass jar to seal the demon. Jet thought Constantine was kind to Gary, but Constantine viewed Gary as just a useless addict. After preparing the glass jar, they needed to find the demon. In a supermarket restroom, a woman was possessed by the insects and began ravenously eating food. When a guard tried to stop her, she bit him. The incident quickly made the news, and Constantine guessed it was a hunger demon. He decided to handle it alone, forbidding Jet and Gary from coming along. Despite Gary's eagerness to help, Constantine bluntly refused. After Constantine left, Jet and Gary discussed Atra. Years ago, Gary and some friends had seen Constantine as their leader. Knowing he was an exorcist, they begged to join him. But after a failed exorcism for Astra, they never saw each other again. Suddenly, Gary had a severe reaction from the drugs, and when Jet accidentally touched him, she experienced a violent reaction and passed out. Meanwhile, Constantine arrived at the scene. Investigating, he discovered that after the insects left the supermarket woman, they had possessed a butcher. When Constantine reached the slaughterhouse, all the employees were dead, and the possessed butcher was eating raw meat. Constantine took out the glass jar and chanted a spell to seal the demon. However, the glass jar shattered unexpectedly. Constantine quickly fled, trapping the swarm of insects inside. He returned and asked Gary how to draw the insects into the jar, but Gary didn't know. Jet touched Gary and discovered some clues. Constantine looked at the drawing Jet had made earlier and recognized it as a shaman. He immediately went out to find a shaman friend to help contact the person in the drawing. Although the friend knew the person in the drawing, he had a way to help Constantine find him, on the condition that he had to take a hallucinogenic drug. As soon as Constantine took the drug, he saw scenes in Sudan, Africa. People were fighting over food. The man in the drawing used a kusa knife to carve symbols onto a boy, sealing the hunger demon inside him. The hunger demon sensed a growing dark power in the U.S. and brought Gary there. After learning how to seal the hunger demon, Constantine immediately sought the kusa knife. Gary wanted to go with Constantine, so he knocked Jet unconscious and left. When Constantine returned, Gary was gone. He assumed Gary had gone out to buy drugs. Sure enough, he found Gary being beaten by drug dealers. Constantine rescued him and took him to a bar for a drink. After a few drinks, Gary began to feel guilty. When Astra was dragged to hell, he had fled in fear. Constantine comforted Gary, saying that even if he had stayed, he couldn't have helped. Everything was Constantine's fault, and he didn't blame others. Just then, the TV reported a new incident, and Constantine and Gary sprang into action. They broke into a museum where a kusa knife was kept. They divided tasks. Gary would find the knife, and Constantine would handle the alarms and guards. With a spell, Constantine gathered the guards into one spot for exercise. Gary found the kusa knife. At the crime scene, a girl possessed by the hunger demon was eating large amounts of popcorn. Constantine told Gary the only way to seal the demon was using a human body. Gary understood that Constantine intended to use his body to seal the hunger demon. Instead of being angry, he was ready to embrace death. As an addict with no hope, sacrificing himself to save others was a noble act. With a heavy heart, Constantine chanted the spell, transferring the hunger demon into Gary, then used the knife to carve symbols on him. Returning to the warehouse, Jet was distraught seeing Gary and angrily called Constantine a bastard, unaware of his own deep pain. He reminded Jet that those close to him never had a good end, using Gary as proof. In Gary's final days, Constantine stayed by his side, tormented by guilt. Thanks to Gary's sacrifice, the hunger demon was gone. Episode 5: A cop named Jim was urinating in an alley when a girl walked by, cursing him. As she walked away, she bumped into a masked person who asked if she thought they were beautiful. Before she could answer, she was stabbed multiple times. Jim drew his gun and fired at the masked person, but strangely, the bullets didn't hit. The girl died. At the same time, Jet sensed a disturbance on the map, and her abilities suddenly vanished. Constantine, thinking she had overexerted herself, took out a lantern to help her enhance her psychic awareness. Gazing at the lantern, which showed a bear, Jet experienced a hallucination of her childhood, where her mother was teaching her to shoot. The lantern worked, and the dry blood on the map became fresh again. Constantine realized Jet had a connection with the map, which would help solve cases more easily. A new case arose in New Orleans. Constantine, Jet, and Chales investigated the alley. Using a bracelet, Constantine chanted a spell, and the gemstone turned blue, indicating a supernatural event had occurred. Green meant the demon was nearby, and red meant it was present. Jim approached them, and Jet recognized him as the boy she had seen in her childhood. Jim dismissed them as frauds and walked away. Finding no new clues, Constantine decided to stay at a luxurious hotel, funded by his gambling winnings. In the elevator, Jet saw a path leading to an isolated area. She walked in and saw a scarred tree and a car rushing towards her before snapping out of the hallucination. That night, a young man hailed a taxi, and the driver began groping him as soon as he got in. Suddenly, the young man disappeared and reappeared in front of the car. The driver panicked, crashed into a tree, and died. The next day, Constantine and Jet arrived at the crime scene, which the police had cordoned off. Jet tried to pose as a family member of the victim to get information, but was denied. They only learned that there had been 3 similar incidents near this tree recently. Then Jim arrived, suspecting Constantine's involvement in the case, and arrested him. Constantine told Chales and Jet to split up and investigate. Chales went to the nearby alleys and saw a masked woman asking a man if she was beautiful. Chales intervened, and the woman removed her mask, revealing a grotesque mouth. Chales wasn't scared and complimented her, but she stabbed him multiple times. Paramedics arrived shortly after, thinking Chales was dead, but his wounds healed immediately. Constantine, tied up at the police station, tried to convince Jim of his innocence. Jim had arrested Constantine to question him about the culprit. Constantine explained that the recent crimes were caused by spirits. Jim showed him a picture of a beautiful girl whose colleague had slashed her face with scissors, leading her to commit suicide. After the colleague was released from prison, a mysterious masked woman began attacking people. Constantine went to the colleague's house, where she admitted to disfiguring the girl out of jealousy, but now felt remorseful and did volunteer work to atone for her actions. Jet visited the first victim's house, and the elderly woman recounted an argument with her son Philip, who left home and hitchhiked, only to die in a crash. Although the model and Philip had no connection, the elderly woman had once helped the model find a medium, Midnight, in New Orleans. That night, Midnight was conducting a ritual to reunite a woman with her deceased husband when Constantine interrupted, claiming that the spirits Midnight summoned were harming the living. Midnight didn't believe him and knocked Constantine out, locking him in the trunk. Midnight then contacted his deceased sister, who confirmed the spirits were indeed causing harm. The next day, Midnight saw the woman's husband draining her life force. Frightened, he returned to his car and found Constantine had escaped. They agreed to work together. Constantine would break the spells, and Midnight's sister would help Constantine with a task. That night, Jim and Jet visited the crash site, hoping to see Philip's spirit. Near dawn, Philip appeared, asking for a ride. Unlike the masked woman, Philip didn't attack anyone and suddenly disappeared. Jet sped up and tried to hit Philip, but nothing happened. Constantine and Midnight sneaked into a tomb to find the spirit's remains. They dug up 3 bodies and burned them, chanting to release the spirits. When nothing happened, they blamed each other. Constantine realized something and called Jim, asking him to bring the people who had interacted with the spirits. It turned out that the spirits were summoned by the guilt of their loved ones. To break the curse, they needed to resolve this guilt. Constantine and Midnight chanted again, successfully this time. The masked woman, Philip, and the husband felt the summons and disappeared, breaking the curse. Constantine informed Jim that Philip's spirit had vanished, and Jim breathed a sigh of relief. Jim then told Jet he was investigating her case. A year ago, her family had reported her missing, but she was still alive and didn't want to return home. Understanding her situation, Jim closed the case. Afterward, Midnight's sister helped Constantine with his task. Constantine asked why the dark times were rising, and she revealed that someone close to him would betray him, causing endless darkness. In episode 6, the scene shifts to a blood-soaked house with a man hanging from the ceiling, apparently dead. His daughter sits quietly in a corner. Police arrive to investigate, and the tension causes her eyes to turn black, shattering a glass on the table. The police, believing she was involved in her father's death, draw their guns on her. Constantine wakes up in a woman's bed and escapes through the window as her husband arrives. For days, only Constantine and Chales were left in the team while Jet attended art school. The prophecy map showed another blood drop, leading them to the crime scene. Constantine examined the house, tasted the blood on the wall, and saw Manny watching him. Manny, disgusted but unable to intervene in human matters, watched as Constantine used magic to recreate the crime's events. With a single glance, he knew the girl was possessed. After committing the crime, the demon vanished and moved on to the next family. In another house, a young boy screamed in terror. His parents thought he had a nightmare and paid no attention. Henry, the boy, saw a stranger in his room. Once his parents left, the figure reappeared, approaching him. Henry screamed again, but when his parents returned, he was calm and told them to go back to sleep. Meanwhile, Constantine asked an acquaintance to gather records about the possessed girl in similar cases. All cases had one commonality: the child was the sole survivor. The first incident happened 35 years ago, the second 18 years ago, but there had been 3 consecutive cases this month. Why? The resurgence of the dark times had led to an increase in demon appearances. These children were all heavily guarded. The child from the first case, Marcelo, was the most accessible. Constantine hurried to the psychiatric hospital to find Marcelo. A nurse explained that 35 years ago, Marcelo had decapitated his parents with an axe and placed their heads in a wood chipper. As a child, his parents often punished him with an axe when he misbehaved. Constantine didn't understand why they used an axe until he saw Marcelo missing 3 fingers. Realizing his parents had chopped them off, Marcelo was now in a vegetative state, unable to move or speak. Henry's father, Darren, was awakened by noises outside and went to investigate but found nothing. Returning to his room, he stepped on a broken light bulb, cutting his foot. Henry, already possessed, pretended to hear the noise too. Meanwhile, Constantine was tracking the demon's new location. He and Chales followed the demon's path. Inside Henry, the demon grew stronger. A dog on the street barked at Henry, who scared it away with a glance. At home, Henry and his mother were decorating pumpkins. When she left, Henry stabbed a pumpkin with a knife. His frightened mother snatched the knife away. Henry then used his mind to make a bird crash into the window, scaring her even more. That evening, Constantine arrived in town with an incense burner, which led him to Henry's house. Unable to enter without permission, he observed Henry from a distance. The next day, Constantine went to Henry's school and saw him being bullied. He informed a teacher, but the teacher dismissed it as typical child's play. Later, Henry used his mind to push a classmate, causing severe brain injury. When Henry's parents confronted him, Constantine burst in, pretending to be a teacher. He held a ginger root in front of Henry, who screamed in fear. It turned out demons feared ginger. Constantine told Henry's parents that their son was possessed, but Darren didn't believe him and had Constantine arrested. Claire, realizing something was wrong with her son, bailed Constantine out. He explained the recent cases and warned that their family was the next target. There were 3 ways to resolve the situation. The first was to find the demon's origin. The second was to exorcise Henry directly, but Constantine didn't want to risk another failure like with Astra. The third, and most effective, was to seal the demon. Constantine instructed Claire to sedate Henry. He then went to Marcelo's old, abandoned house, the demon's first crime scene, to perform the sealing ritual. However, nothing happened. The demon remained inside Henry. Constantine returned to Henry's home. Darren tried to throw him out, but Henry, using his powers, knocked Darren unconscious. Constantine used a mirror to reflect the demon's attack back at it. Overwhelmed, the demon fled to a nearby haunted house. He held the mirror and moved forward, but a haunted house employee bumped into him, causing the mirror to shatter. Suddenly, Henry appeared with an axe in his hand. Constantine knew the demon was Marcelo. He grabbed Henry and then said Marcelo's full name. Marcelo's spirit was exorcised, and Henry returned to normal, looking confused. Years ago, Marcelo had suffered so much trauma that his spirit left his body to attack people. Constantine's spell had returned Marcelo's spirit to his body. Marcelo would have to stay in a psychiatric hospital for the rest of his life. Constantine sat by the roadside, lighting a cigarette, ready to face the next challenges. Episode 7. The son of a pastor named Zajari had taken over his father's work, but his performance was terrible. His father used to handle snakes to prove his courage and faith. Zajari tried to imitate his father, but was bitten and passed out. Thought to be dead, he suddenly revived when a feather appeared in his hand. A legless man wanted to try this magic. Zajari merely touched him, and his leg grew back. Jet was drawing when a snake wrapped around her leg, causing her to scream in fear. After class, a male model asked Jet out for coffee, but she declined because she wasn't interested. He was persistent, so Jet gave him her phone number. Later, Jet told Constantine about the snake incident. Constantine immediately remembered news about a pastor who died from a snake bite but then came back to life. The news was believed to be false, but Jet suspected it was true and that her hallucinations were related to it. Constantine and Jet visited Zajari's church. Zajari was helping a blind person see again, and the crowd cheered continuously. Constantine thought they were just putting on a show, but then someone with a skin disease was also cured. Constantine and Jet finally identified Zajari as the person they were looking for. Zajari began speaking in a language no one understood, but Constantine recognized it as the language of angels, leaving him astonished. Ordinary people with angelic power pay a high price. So what had Zajari sacrificed? A legless man Zajari healed went back to the hospital for a checkup. The doctor was amazed by the patient's newly grown legs, but the patient's face suddenly changed. His pupils turned red, and he attacked the doctor, growling like an animal. After leaving the hospital, he lost all sanity and brutally killed a policeman. This incident was captured on camera. No one knew what would happen to those healed by Zajari. Crowds lined up to see him. Constantine and Jet waited half a day before meeting him. When Jet touched Zajari, angelic radiance enveloped her, leaving her stunned. When it was Constantine's turn, he didn't touch Zajari but asked where he learned the angelic language. Zajari said an angel had bestowed it upon him. After leaving the church, Jet felt this case was different from the previous ones. She genuinely felt divine power. While Zajari's acts seemed good, Constantine believed otherwise. Constantine asked Manny for help, but he didn't appear. Constantine had to draw a summoning circle to call Manny. Suddenly, Jet transformed into Manny. Manny knew a human was using angelic power, but not wanting to interfere with human affairs. He simply said, "Head towards the sun," and vanished, with Jet returning to normal. Constantine followed the sun's direction and heard a voice. They discovered an angel trapped under some leaves. The angel appeared severely injured. Constantine took the angel to a deserted farm. Jet was excited to see an angel for the first time. The angel explained that while escorting the dead to heaven, someone plucked a feather from her, causing her to fall to earth. An angel losing a feather leads to severe injury, but it was the first time a human had done this. Constantine used a hose to create a protective circle for the angel. They needed to retrieve the feather from Zajari to help the angel return to heaven quickly. While Zajari was being praised by the townspeople, he got into an argument with his sister. She believed Zajari should stick to preaching and not heal people, as no magic came without a heavy price. Zajari disregarded her warnings and continued carrying the feather, healing people. At that moment, the police came to the church to investigate the man who grew legs and attacked a police officer. His sister argued that Zajari's actions led to unforeseeable consequences, causing a rift between them. As night fell, Constantine and Jet camped outside the church, like pilgrims from afar, staying overnight. Constantine entered the church and demanded Zajari return the feather to the angel, but Zajari refused. When Constantine tried to attack, he was repelled by the feather's power, and Zajari threw him out. Meanwhile, as Jet slept in the tent, the legless man attacked her, now mad and attacking everyone. Constantine ultimately had to kill him with a tent stake. After a while, the healed devotees would turn into demons. Constantine guessed these demons went to the church seeking Zajari's healing. The solution was simple: return the feather to the angel. Constantine devised a plan for Jet to join the religion. During the initiation ceremony, Jet stealthily stole the feather from Zajari. A large number of devotees turned into demons and chased Jet. The three of them fled to the church. When Jet inserted the feather, the angel's wings turned black. It turned out this was a fallen angel intending to destroy the world. The fallen angel tried to fly away but was stopped by Constantine's magic. This fallen angel had willingly given Zajari the feather to stay on Earth and conquer the world. She was close to achieving her goal. The fallen angel captured Jet to force Constantine to break the spell. Constantine, unable to fight the angel alone, called on Manny. Manny possessed Jet and killed the fallen angel. When Jet regained consciousness, she found the fallen angel's heart in her hand. After resolving everything, Zajari continued preaching in the church, but had changed, becoming a model pastor. Manny warned Constantine to speed up his investigations. The fallen angel's arrival signaled that the barrier between Earth and Hell was weakening. If the rise of darkness wasn't stopped, it could lead to disaster. At that moment, Jet received a call from the male model. She had forgotten their meeting. The model's persistence wasn't because he liked Jet, but because someone mysterious was controlling him. Episode 8, the story opens with a mother giving birth in a convent. Sister Anna congratulated her, sensing something strange about the convent's atmosphere. That night, a demonic hand snatched the baby away. The mother screamed, only to be killed immediately. Simultaneously, Jet had a strange feeling and drew many pictures of demons. Constantine recognized one as Vulture, a monster known for kidnapping children, thought to be extinct. Constantine couldn't believe Vulture was still causing trouble. Shortly after, Anna's spirit appeared at their place, surprising Constantine. It turned out Anna's body was still in Mexico. Constantine rushed to Mexico to help Anna catch the demon. Anna was actually Constantine's ex-girlfriend. She knew some magic, but found the demon too elusive, needing Constantine's help. Jet also wanted to go with him to Mexico, but Constantine believed their enemies this time were too dangerous, so he refused to let her come along. Constantine and Chales drove to the convent in Mexico, which was surrounded by police. The child's father was the chief of police there, so they took the matter very seriously. Although Anna had cooperated with Constantine, she didn't know much due to the limited investigation time. Anna had gone through the Astra incident with Constantine and still blamed him, causing tension when they met. Meanwhile, Jet was home alone when she suddenly heard a strange sound. Following the noise, she discovered a room connected to another dimension and almost fell into it. At this moment, Constantine was investigating the missing child case. If this was the work of the demon Vulture, the child was likely already eaten. Therefore, Constantine had to find out what kind of demon it was. Just then, Anna's colleague entered the room to ask if they could help. Constantine's teasing scared her off, which annoyed Anna, though she didn't show it. Constantine and Anna prepared the ritual. Constantine chanted a spell, holding some stones. When he threw the stones on the table, they burst into flames, indicating the creature was highly intelligent. Kidnapping the children wasn't just for eating. If they could find an item the child used frequently, they might trace the demon. Fortunately, the locals had a custom of burying the placenta in the forest for good luck. Constantine and Anna hurried there. Before getting out of the car, they talked about why they broke up. Apparently, Constantine had slept with Anna and then flirted with another girl. What a playboy. But this wasn't the main reason Anna hated him. She despised him most for never caring about anyone. Suddenly, they discovered something that interrupted their conversation. Although they couldn't dig up the placenta, Constantine found a tree with strange fruits growing on it. The fruit skin was human flesh, and its insides were blood and human tissue. Just then, the police chief arrived with a gun, but calmed down upon seeing Anna. Constantine showed the chief the human flesh fruit, which had to be linked to some evil entity. Before the chief could process this, he received news of another missing child. Meanwhile, Jet met a male model named Eddie, and they went to a bar for drinks. Eddie used all his charms to woo Jet, but she felt he might lock her up. Eddie's true identity was revealed. Jet invited Eddie home for more drinks, and he agreed. By this time, Constantine reached the scene of the latest abduction. The missing child was the police chief's nephew. Within 2 days, both his son and nephew had been taken. The chief was so furious he vomited blood. Constantine suspected the kidnapper was targeting the chief's family, possibly due to a curse. Constantine devised a peculiar plan, using a ritual to make the shadow of the curse's caster appear on the fountain's surface. Remembering Constantine's past failures, Anna worried his magic might harm innocents, but he ignored her concerns. Chales comforted Anna as Constantine set up the ritual around the fountain. Just one step away from revealing the child-snatching monster, a nun tried to chase him off. Taking advantage of her distraction, he poured a bowl of insects into the water, completing the ritual. The shadow on the water was that of the nun, whom Constantine identified as Lamassu. Furious at being exposed, Lamassu tried to drown Constantine, but he managed to stab her with a holy knife, escaping her grasp. Anna and the others arrived, and Constantine was surprised by the kidnapper's identity. Lamassu usually drained blood on sight, and this was the first time he'd seen it kidnap children. He asked the police chief if his relatives had any unique traits. The chief couldn't think of any, and went to ask his grandmother. The smart old woman immediately mentioned a name, Bruguera, a witch organization predating Chile's founding. They kidnapped the chief's descendants because his grandfather was a member of this witch organization. Betrayers were to be killed. Constantine thought the organization had been wiped out by God, but found out they still existed and were stronger than ever. This group was beyond Constantine's expectations, and he had to investigate further. He injected the chief's blood into a chicken, using a charm to disguise it as the chief's newborn, to lure Lamassu. Knowing Lamassu had encountered Constantine before, the sacrifice had to be done by someone else. Anna volunteered without hesitation. Back at Jet's place, she brought Eddie home. As they kissed, Jet twisted Eddie's arm. Eddie confessed that her father hired him to watch over her. Not only that, but Eddie also brought others along. Jet planned to use Eddie as a hostage, but they shot him and chased after Jet. In panic, she fled down a hallway. After a struggle, Jet managed to open a strange door and push the attacker inside. However, there was still another assailant hiding somewhere. Taking advantage of the moment, he injected Jet with a tranquilizer. Meanwhile, Constantine, unaware of Jet's ordeal, was preparing to battle the ancient vampire with Anna. Finally, they were able to put their past conflicts aside. Anna wasn't just Constantine's first love, she was also his magic teacher. After sharing a farewell kiss, Anna recited the spell to summon Lamassu. Sure enough, Lamassu appeared shortly after and took the disguised chicken. The police chief, in his agitation, fired his gun at Lamassu, scaring it away. Constantine quickly stopped the chief from doing anything rash. Anna took the chief's gun and, along with Constantine and Chales, descended into the sewer. They split up to search for Lamassu. Soon, Constantine and Anna followed the sound of crying children and found the two missing kids. This was why they had to fight Lamassu. Constantine knew his task was to kidnap children and keep them alive. He used the children as leverage, forcing Lamassu to reveal why the La Bruguera organization was doing this. Lamassu confessed that La Bruguera was collaborating with demons to drag humanity into hell, allowing demons to rule the world and kill humans. Constantine summoned the demon Bejuju, who was both Lamassu's former lover and enemy. Bejuju attacked Lamassu with fire, forcing it to flee. Anna was disappointed in Constantine's approach. She hugged the two children and handed one to Chales. As they were about to leave, they heard another child crying from deeper in the sewer. Following the sound, they discovered an invulture demon. Unable to outrun the creature, Anna had an idea. She pointed the gun at Constantine. She didn't need to outrun the invulture. She only needed to outrun Constantine to protect the child in her arms. The gunshot rang out, and Constantine fell. He found himself in a dire situation. In episode 9, faced with the invulture demon and gravely injured, Constantine had two choices: wait to die or risk a dangerous move. He chose the latter, chanting a spell to let the demon Bejuju possess him. One look at Bejuju's possessed form scared the invulture away. At this moment, the angel Manny appeared, scolding Constantine for using that tactic, insisting he should have asked for angelic help. Constantine retorted that waiting for Manny would have meant his death. Unable to respond, Manny turned and left. Meanwhile, Jet was captured by her father's men. When she woke up, handcuffed and locked in a car trunk, she quickly found a way to free herself. When her captor opened the trunk, she attacked him, injected him with the tranquilizer, and escaped. Chales found a lightly injured Constantine in the dark sewer. Constantine knew he might not survive much longer and told Chales that if the demon Bejuju took over his body, Chales must kill him immediately. Jet contacted Chales and, learning about Constantine's possession, rushed to reunite with the group. As Chales was on the phone, Constantine lost consciousness to the demon. When he came to, he found himself amid a pile of corpses. Constantine was captured and imprisoned. The prison warden explained that bandits had ambushed him. Despite the bandits being dead or seriously injured, Constantine was jailed for exceeding the limits of self-defense. This verdict drove Constantine mad, but he was powerless to change it. Jet arrived in Mexico but couldn't locate Constantine. They found themselves in an unfamiliar place, unsure of where to go. Jet suddenly remembered Anna, thinking she might help. Although Chales knew Anna had shot Constantine, they had no better option and decided to try. They found Anna silently praying in a church. Anna had no regrets about shooting Constantine because he used infants as hostages to extract information. This crossed a line for her. Anna believed the Roman Catholic Church would know how to deal with the demon. Jet bluntly refuted Anna's words. Heaven had sent an angel to work with Constantine, proving he had greater power than anyone else. Anna was speechless, realizing she might have made a mistake. In prison, Constantine sought out Giulio for help. Since Constantine had killed a member of a mafia group, many inmates wanted him dead. Constantine asked Giulio to take him to the small prison chapel to perform an exorcism. Unexpectedly, Giulio betrayed him. A group of mafia members stormed in, interrupting the ritual, seeking revenge for their fallen brothers. Suddenly, the chapel lights flickered. The thugs drew their knives, ready to stab Constantine. However, they hesitated, intimidated by Constantine's fierce gaze. It was too late to run. They could only let the demons tear them apart, with blood flowing out the door. When Constantine regained consciousness, he had become the boss of the prison. No inmate dared to touch him. Giulio, terrified, became fully submissive to Constantine. At that moment, a copy of Anna came to find Constantine. After confirming that Constantine was possessed, she felt remorseful. She informed Constantine that Jet and Chales were coming to help him, advising him to prepare. However, since Constantine was in prison, meeting him would be difficult. Chales brought Constantine a speaker to record the exorcism ritual in 50 different languages, and a dagger to destroy both humans and demons. When the exorcism ritual failed, they had to smuggle these items into the prison. Jet disguised himself as a woman to get in. Chales assaulted a guard to get arrested and meet Constantine. Constantine was pleased to see his teammates but couldn't control his body. Anna entered the prison under the guise of a nun. With Anna's help, the success rate of the exorcism increased. As Jet's team began their rescue plan, the demon did not remain idle. Constantine had disrupted the La Bruguera group's plans, and they would not let it go easily. A man in a suit visited the prison warden. After scrutinizing him, the man suddenly swallowed the warden whole. He then appeared in the guise of the warden, boldly entering the prison. He later transformed into countless venomous snakes. At the same time, Constantine began the exorcism ritual. He had Chales strap him to a chair, ready to face any challenge. Anna played the exorcism recording and sprinkled holy water on Constantine. Constantine remained unresponsive, seemingly possessed by the demon. At this moment, La Bruguera's mysterious man arrived. He was Nahas, the most infamous demon, there to kill Constantine. But Nahas did not strike immediately. According to the plan, Anna was to kill Constantine with the exorcism dagger. Naturally, Nahas wouldn't let that happen. He attacked Chales, thwarting the attempt. Unexpectedly, Anna turned the dagger on Nahas, but the dagger vanished. Without the sacred weapon, the exorcism became difficult. They had to take Constantine back to his residence, where there were enough tools to handle any situation. But first, they needed to solve two problems. They had to break out of prison, or Constantine would die before reaching home, and the demon might fully possess him. Giulio devised a way to slow the possession process. He stole drugs from inmates to induce a coma in Constantine. After injecting the drugs, Constantine lay still. They disguised themselves as medical staff transporting a corpse to smuggle Constantine out. However, the guard held a grudge against them. Anna used a doppelganger spell to create an illusion of a naked woman to distract the guard. While the guard was distracted, Chales loaded Constantine into a car and drove away. Back at Constantine's residence, the three began the exorcism ritual. Anna advised Jet not to participate, but Jet insisted on staying with Constantine. When Constantine regained consciousness, he told Anna to recite the exorcism incantation, because his recording was not strong enough. As a nun, Anna had greater power. As soon as Anna chanted the spell, Constantine's body began to convulse violently, emitting demonic sounds from his mouth. Objects in the room started shaking, and the lights went out. Constantine was completely possessed by the demon. He used his words to attack everyone's weaknesses. Anna and Chales were affected by the demon's words. However, Jet remained resolute and comforted Chales and Anna. Anna believed her faith wasn't strong enough to deal with Pajuju. Jet encouraged Anna to try and save Constantine. Anna calmed down and used all the magic she had learned. After a while, the demon inside Constantine disappeared. Constantine regained consciousness. The next day, Anna prepared to return to Mexico. Constantine apologized to her for everything that had happened, but Anna had already forgiven him. They reconciled, each striving towards their own goals. Constantine thanked Jet and Chales for their help. Episode 10. A mysterious wizard wearing a hat is chanting. A black smoke emerges and attacks a little girl. Jet is about to leave Constantine's house. She tells Constantine that there is an organization she is very afraid of, and its leader is her father. Constantine urges her to stay, promising to protect her. Suddenly, the map changes, indicating a new case in New York where 12 people have suddenly collapsed, and doctors cannot diagnose the cause. Constantine, carrying a bag full of strange magical weapons, prepares to go to New York. Coincidentally, Chales is also headed to New York to see his wife and children. When Chales arrives at his ex-wife's house, he finds his daughter Geraldine unconscious. Upon receiving Chas's message, Constantine and Jet immediately head to the hospital. Geraldine is unconscious and beyond medical help. Constantine applies a potion to her lips, revealing that her soul has left her body. This means she is still alive, but they must retrieve her soul quickly, or she will die. Constantine needs an item of Geraldine's to find her soul. At this point, Chas's ex-wife Renée arrives. She dislikes Constantine and blames Chales for letting him near their daughter. However, Constantine is one of the few who can save Geraldine. Constantine, Jet, and Chales then seek out the psychic Fennel. When Fennel sees Constantine, he points a gun at him. Chales disarms Fennel and knocks him out. After being subdued, Fennel performs a ritual to summon Geraldine. As soon as Geraldine's soul enters Fennel, a mysterious force pulls it away, and a demon takes control of Fennel's body. The demon tells Constantine to leave and burns Fennel alive. Fennel sacrifices himself. Constantine needs a book on demon immolation, of which there are only 5 in the world. This task is assigned to Jet, who uses her psychic powers to locate the book. She sees a dark room with a train car nearby. The three head to the train's location but find only an empty field. Constantine throws a piece of metal into the air, which suddenly vanishes. He chants, revealing the train station. It is occupied by a dark wizard named Philip Voss, a former apprentice of many dark wizards. Empowered by demons, Voss can capture souls. Knowing he cannot defeat Voss, Constantine negotiates with him. A lesser demon, Carabasan, is after Voss's soul, and they strike a deal. Constantine will help Voss defeat Carabasan in exchange for Geraldine's soul. Chales is furious, not understanding why Constantine would collaborate with Voss. But Constantine knows Voss is too strong to fight directly. Jet and Constantine find Carabasan. Constantine creates a magic circle with kerosene, planning to burn Carabasan and send it to hell. He uses special glasses to locate the demon, which only attacks sleeping people. Constantine told Jet to pretend to sleep while he hid nearby. Carabasan fell into the trap, entering the magic circle, but Constantine suddenly couldn't ignite it. With no other options, he used an electric rod to attack Carabasan, eventually defeating it. He then demanded Voss fulfill his promise. However, Voss broke his word and forced Constantine to continue working for him. Helpless, Constantine agreed, but Chales couldn't wait any longer. Chales knocked Constantine out, deciding to handle Voss his own way. Chales, who had the power to resurrect, wasn't afraid of death. 2 years earlier, while Chales and Constantine were drinking in a bar, Constantine asked Chales to cover the bill, and then cast a spell to sober him up. Constantine then hurriedly left the bar, where a famous band was performing. The band's pyrotechnics caused a fire, leading to chaos as people tried to escape. Many died, including Chales. But when he woke up, Chales found himself in a hospital, his wife and daughter by his side. His wife Renée said that Chales and 47 others had died in the fire, but he was the only one who miraculously came back to life, his burns healing on their own. Since then, Chales had the power to resurrect, which was linked to Constantine's spell. Constantine was surprised to learn Chales had died and come back to life. The spell, originating from Merlin to protect King Arthur, allowed Knights of the Round Table to continue guarding him even after death. This meant Chales had the souls of the 47 people who died that night and could resurrect 47 times. Feeling guilty for their deaths, Chales joined Constantine in fighting demons to make their sacrifices meaningful. However, this mission took him away from his family, causing Renée to leave with their daughter. Despite everything, Chales was determined to save Geraldine's soul. Chales confronted Voss, offering to exchange 32 of his souls for his daughter's. Voss didn't believe Chales until he slit his own throat and resurrected in front of him. Meanwhile, Jet stayed with Geraldine and Renée, using her psychic powers to contact Geraldine's soul, but was attacked by Voss. Jet collapsed, dropping a piece of paper with the train car's address, which Renée picked up. When Constantine woke up, he rushed to stop Chales from making a fatal mistake. Giving up his remaining 31 souls would mean permanent death for Chales. But Chales had a plan. He used Achilles' heel to bind Voss's hands, and then detonated a grenade, blowing up the room. Both Chales and Voss died. Renée arrived, devastated at the sight of her dead husband, but Constantine assured her that Chales had many lives. Renée understood and forgave Chales, who soon revived and returned home. Geraldine also woke up, and Jet came out of her coma, sensing Constantine's mother's spirit. His mother told him, "It wasn't your fault I died," bringing Constantine peace as he slept beside Jet. Episode 11 In a Secret Room. 4 college students, Carter, Adam, Lily, and Miranda, found a magical book and chanted a spell to summon a magic circle. They were transported to a creepy house, each exploring a different room. Jacob, with a terrifying face, was in one of the rooms. The 4 screamed and woke up, unsure of what they had experienced. Meanwhile, Constantine was drinking with someone in a mirror. The angel Manny appeared, mocking Constantine for being stuck in the past. With Jet in the hospital, and Chales with his family, Constantine was alone. But demons wouldn't let him rest. This time, the case involved Richie, a character from episode 1. Richie was a professor at a university, and those 4 students were his pupils. At this point, Richie still didn't know what had happened. Seeing Constantine suddenly visit him, Richie sensed something was wrong. After class, Carter saw the mysterious person he had met in his dream. His consciousness was immediately transported back to that terrifying house, where he was suffocated to death with a plastic bag over his head. Constantine warned Richie that something was amiss. Richie, already prepared, wasn't surprised. Later, Richie received news that one of his students had suddenly died. Constantine rushed to the crime scene, where the police reported the victim had died from suffocation. The sudden, unexplained death caused suspicion. They continued their investigation. At Carter's memorial that evening, his friends whispered about the strange events, reluctant to tell their professor the truth. Sensing the students were hiding something, Constantine searched the school for clues. Manny appeared again. The school didn't have many suspicious areas, so Constantine quickly found the secret room. He cast a spell to enhance his vision, and saw a magic circle had been used. Richie recalled an Egyptian ritual that could separate the soul from the body. Panicked, he searched his bookshelf and discovered a missing book, the Journal of Jacob Shaw, a serial killer. In the journal, Jacob dreamt of visiting an Egyptian temple. Years ago, after Jacob killed a student, the judge in his case suddenly died. Richie guessed that Jacob's consciousness had entered a new realm, attacking other students. Miranda, practicing dance, saw Jacob and was transported to that eerie room. Unable to reach her, Lily and Adam decided to perform the ritual again to save her. Lily refused and went to the dance studio to find Miranda. They were both correct. Miranda's body was in the studio, but her consciousness was in the mysterious room. As Adam began the ritual, he entered the room and found Miranda severely injured. Meanwhile, in the studio, Lily saw Miranda collapse. Richie and Constantine found Adam performing the ritual. By then, Adam's soul had left his body. In the mysterious room, Jacob attacked Adam and Miranda with a knife, inflicting similar wounds on Adam's real body. Despite Richie and Constantine's efforts, they couldn't wake Adam. That night, both students died. Richie was devastated by the deaths, feeling akin to Constantine, believing they both brought death and misfortune to those around them. But Constantine knew the cause was the rising power of demons. With only Lily left alive, Richie and Constantine had to protect her from Jacob. Lily revealed everything to Richie. The souls of the murdered students were still trapped in that room, tortured by Jacob. Adam, understanding the ritual best, wanted to oppose Jacob. He knew that this world was Jacob's imagination, and bravely challenged him. Jacob smiled, wielding an axe, asserting his dominance over the world. In reality, Constantine and Richie brought Lily to Constantine's house, fortified with protective magic. In Egyptian lore, mirrors were gateways to the spiritual world, allowing Jacob to reach Lily through them. However, the mirrors in Constantine's house were safeguarded by spells. Just as Constantine explained this, Lily took out her phone. She had forgotten that the phone screen, when off, was also a mirror. In an instant, Jacob pulled her in. Inside the spiritual world, Lily reunited with her friends in the eerie house. Jacob relentlessly chased and killed them repeatedly, their situation dire. Meanwhile, Constantine and Richie, determined to save Lily, prepared to enter the spiritual realm themselves. Richie was deeply worried, knowing that Jacob's ability to pull others into his world indicated immense power. Deliberately entering would be perilous. But Constantine, driven by a desire to save lives, disregarded the danger. Constantine chanted a spell, and he and Richie entered Jacob's house. They were separated into 2 different rooms. Richie carefully searched for any trace of Jacob. Suddenly, Constantine appeared, startling him. Together, they needed to find Lily and bring her home. However, the place they were in had only walls and no doors. Richie, well versed in the spiritual world, knew that Jacob's journal was just one of the many books he collected. Using his imagination, he quickly created a door. The 2 joyfully moved into the next room. filled with objects covered in white cloths. Constantine pulled back a cloth and discovered students hidden underneath. Suddenly, Jacob appeared in place of the students. It turned out Jacob had fled to the spiritual world to avoid punishment and, having lived alone for years, was lonely and without friends. He had devised a plan to capture the students to keep him company. Jacob took control of Constantine. Constantine reminded Richie that everything happening was just Jacob's imagination. If Richie could control the spiritual world, he could attack Jacob. Richie, a university professor specializing in magic, looked at the dark sky outside the window and had an idea. He made the sun cover the dark sky. Whether through consciousness or imagination, Richie was far stronger than Jacob and could easily control this small house. The two left the house and went back to the outside world. Upon realizing Jacob's house was about to collapse and disappear, Constantine rushed back in to save the students. Unfortunately, only Lily could escape. The other three were killed by Jacob and vanished along with the house. Although there was some regret, their souls were freed from torment and found happiness. Lily was very sad but had to suppress her pain, accept the truth, and return to reality. However, Richie and Constantine did not return. Richie found the spiritual world incredibly beautiful. He suddenly wanted to stay there and not go back to the real world. He had witnessed the cruelty, greed, and stupidity of the world. If he stayed in this world, he could avoid those troubles. But if Richie stayed, his body and reality would die. Constantine didn't want to lose another close friend. He told Richie not to indulge himself and avoid responsibility, ending up like Jacob. Then Constantine returned to reality. Richie also returned to the real world to continue fighting demons. Through this, Richie gained a new sense of purpose. When teaching, he became more serious than before. Constantine went back to his place, reflecting on the past and drinking to ease his sorrow. Reality was painful and harsh, but we always have to take responsibility. Episode 12. A girl with a terrified expression walked down the street. It was midnight, and instead of sleeping, she went to the black market to buy drugs. Seeing she had money, the dealer gave her 2 high-dose vials. As soon as she got the drugs, she quickly found a secluded spot to inject them. Just then, the streetlight exploded, creating sparks that quickly extinguished. A mysterious figure appeared on the deserted street. It was incredibly powerful and immediately attacked the girl, injecting her with both vials. When the police found her, she was in a deep coma. Then, she suddenly woke up. Meanwhile, Constantine was staring at a map and talking to Manny. During this time, Jet wasn't doing well. She was meditating in her room. Constantine approached her to check on her condition. Without Jet's psychic abilities, the group's demon hunting efficiency would significantly decrease. Constantine urged Jet to quickly recover. Manny also pushed him. Although nothing new had appeared on the map recently, Manny still sensed dark forces continuing their evil deeds. As darkness grew, bad things continued to happen outside the map. But Constantine only paid attention to the map, ignoring other information. Manny advised Constantine to pay attention to news beyond the map. In a fit of anger, Manny burned the map and personally directed Constantine. This angered Constantine. The group followed Manny's directions to the hospital. Chales posed as a patient while Constantine and Jet acted as family members to infiltrate the hospital. Due to Z's condition, Constantine had to use his own eyes to examine a girl. Her veins had turned black. Constantine immediately recognized the problem. Jet grabbed the girl's hand, using her psychic abilities to investigate. Amidst the glow, an angel appeared, but then pain struck, blinding her. Suddenly, the patient on the hospital bed deteriorated rapidly and soon died. Jet also began convulsing and had to be rushed to emergency. Chales anxiously inquired about Jet's condition, but Constantine seemed indifferent. He told Chales to quickly leave the bedside, or he might be taken for surgery. Just then, a large scar-faced man arrived at the hospital. He was aggressive, constantly berating the nurse and demanding to see Dr. Garland. Constantine ignored the man and went to the morgue with Chales. He chanted a spell and quickly learned about the demon possessing the girl's body. Jet woke up, and though Constantine appeared uninterested, he was the first to visit her room. The doctor told Jet that she had a tumor in her brain. While not life-threatening at the moment, it could cause seizures, headaches, and hallucinations, which worried Jet. Meanwhile, after the morgue staff left, Dr. Garland entered the room for a drink. The light flickered, and a large man suddenly attacked him. In an instant, his veins turned black. Constantine stood on the rooftop, smoking in frustration. Z's illness distressed him deeply. The angel Manny arrived and possessed the doctor standing next to Constantine. Constantine pleaded with Manny to heal Jet, but Manny refused. In anger, Constantine smashed a vial of magic potion, causing Manny to faint. When Manny awoke, Constantine had drawn a magical circle on his chest, trapping Manny's soul in a human body. He forced Manny to participate in demon hunting to experience his suffering. Manny lost his powers, but Constantine didn't care. He wanted to teach Manny a lesson. Thus, the two began their investigation in the hospital. Constantine had Manny's soul possess a doctor. They found a blood-soaked body with black veins. Constantine performed a chest surgery on the victim. Manny realized the dark power in the body came from black diamonds. Before the apocalypse caused by the Great Flood, a dark wizard had attempted to destroy the world. God ultimately had to destroy him. After his death, all his energy condensed into black diamonds, which were shattered by angels. After the flood, these fragments were scattered everywhere. Anyone who found a fragment would be influenced by its power, gaining dark strength. Constantine broke the storage room door to prevent others from discovering the body. Next, they had to quickly find the culprit before he continued his crimes. The back door of the storage room wasn't damaged, so Constantine guessed the person might have a key to the hospital. He asked Manny to investigate the hospital's records and files for clues. Constantine returned home and took out a black diamond fragment. The fragments were connected, making the investigation easier. He chanted a spell to open the box containing the black diamond fragment and then handed it to Chales to test its effects. Upon contact with the black diamond, Chas's veins immediately turned black, and his temperament became more aggressive. Chas shoved Constantine away. Unable to endure it any longer, Chas dropped the diamond. Through this experiment, Constantine roughly understood the effects of the black diamond. At this moment, Manny, having possessed a doctor, accessed the treatment system. The nurse next to him printed the documents and then pulled him into an empty room. It turned out that the doctor and the nurse were lovers. Manny initially planned to refuse, but he couldn't resist the invitation, so he cheerfully enjoyed the pleasures of the human world. Constantine returned to the hospital, pulled Manny out of his blissful state, and shared his new findings. The black diamond shard would ignite anger in everyone, doubling their power. Through the hospital's information system, Manny investigated and discovered that the murdered girl and the medical staff had something in common. They were both alcohol and drug addicts who had successfully quit but then relapsed. Constantine guessed this would infuriate the killer. The ferocious-looking prisoner had smoked while drinking, causing a fire that killed his wife and children. His child had a burned face. At this point, he was the prime suspect. Before searching for the scarred patient, Manny visited Jet. He happened to meet Dr. Galen, advising Jet to undergo surgery. Galen said the operation was simple and should be done early if it could be treated. While working as a nurse in Baghdad, Iraq, Dr. Galen was shot 1 centimeter from his heart, and the bullet was too close to remove. Many of his comrades didn't even have a chance to be treated. Therefore, Jet should seize this opportunity for surgery. After Galen left, Z realized that the doctor in front of her was Manny. Knowing her psychic abilities were linked to her tumor, she had once suspected they were a curse, not a blessing. After Manny reassured her, Jet felt at ease, believing her psychic abilities were mostly a blessing. Meanwhile, Constantine followed the scar-faced man into the warehouse. The man secretly came here to smoke. As he was lighting a cigarette, a big-headed monster suddenly appeared and lifted him. Constantine was about to intervene but was knocked out. The scarred man was dead. The prime suspect wasn't the killer. The investigation hit a dead end again. The two talked freely about Jet's condition. Galen's previous military work caught Constantine's attention. A few years ago, places with black diamonds were called God's gifts. This place was Baghdad, now Iraq's capital. At this moment, Galen was actively encouraging Jet to agree to the surgery, but this could make her lose her psychic abilities. So Jet refused. While Galen was at a loss, Constantine and Manny entered the hospital room. It turned out that what was near Galen's heart was not a bullet fragment but a piece of black diamond. This was also why Galen went mad. Galen was influenced by the fragment in Constantine's hand and stormed off in anger. The three were utterly shocked and chased him to the hospital's medical records room. Jet recalled that the angel she saw might be Manny. Therefore, Constantine immediately freed Manny. As darkness rose, the power of the fragments increased, and Galen was completely controlled by the pieces. But his nature was very kind, and his anger was because patients didn't value their chance to be saved. Manny then awakened Galen's good spirit, removing the fragment's influence, and took him to heaven. The black diamond fragment in Galen's body merged with Constantine's piece and entered the box, increasing the power of the dark magic weapon. After the case ended, the three went to the church. Jet deeply respected and worshipped Manny. asking him many questions. Constantine, after lighting a cigarette, left. Episode 13. The final episode begins with a perverted old man waking up 3 girls, calling them brides. The scene was very strange. That night, the red-haired girl Vesta ran away from home. Vesta was harassed by the homeless old man, and the 3 girls saved her. They invited Vesta to become the man's bride with them. Their words seemed hypnotic, and Vesta quickly fell into their trap and agreed to go home with the 3 girls. The man silently observed everything. At that moment, a security guard noticed them by the car and asked what was happening. He made an excuse that the car was broken and couldn't move, hoping the guard would help. But when the inspector checked the car, he kidnapped the guard. In another scene, Detective Jim arrived to talk to Constantine, saying that a few days ago, a police officer had been found dead, his body drained of blood, leaving only a dry corpse. He believed some supernatural force was behind it and sought Constantine's help. The dead officer was investigating the case of several missing girls. Clues suggested these disappearances were related to a lunar eclipse. The man was now ready to perform a ritual on the full moon night. The kidnapped guard kept screaming for help. Jim sought Constantine's help because he was impressed by Jet's psychic abilities. However, Jet's visions always showed Jim's death. That night, Constantine went to the cemetery to dig up the police officer's body. After applying some ointment, he discovered the officer was killed by a demon, likely a Satanist. Just as Constantine left, the corpse on the ground came to life. It turned out Gary had possessed the body to warn Constantine that the leader of the La Brugère group was offering a large reward for his death. The evil sorcerer Papa Midnight, upon hearing this, sought out a killer. He killed the assassin and prepared to use his body to kill Constantine. The next day, Constantine's team went to the home of the missing girl, Vesta. It turned out Vesta had run away to find her father. Vesta had been magically transported to a strange room, where she regained her senses and found the house terrifying. However, when she met the girls again, she was enchanted and became docile. Meanwhile, Jet held Vesta's belongings and used her psychic powers to locate her, but Jet was in poor condition and couldn't see anything. Constantine sensed Jet was hiding something and asked her about it. He had heard Jim might die soon, but neither of them told Jim, fearing it would worsen his headaches. While they deliberated, Manny suddenly appeared. This was the first time Manny sought someone other than Constantine. Manny reassured Jet, encouraging her to believe in the blessing of her psychic abilities and not to doubt herself. Then, he suddenly disappeared. Since Jet's psychic abilities had vanished, Constantine decided to take matters into his own hands. He also had psychic abilities, and could use personal items like combs and toothbrushes for divination, though it was risky. Constantine chanted a spell and electrocuted himself, briefly seeing Vesta. That night was the full moon, and Vesta would be sacrificed by the Satanists. If they didn't find her soon, she would die. Meanwhile, Papa Midnight had turned his victim into a zombie, a culturally significant element originating from witch weddings. He ordered the zombie to kill Constantine. Constantine reached the place where Vesta went missing, leading his team into an abandoned amusement park. Inside, Constantine was unexpectedly attacked by zombies. Papa Midnight controlled the puppet with immense strength to kill Constantine. Fortunately, Jim arrived just in time and shot the zombie's head, saving Constantine. But Constantine seemed unfazed, focused only on finding and saving Vesta. Suddenly, Jet's psychic abilities returned. She finally saw the guard kidnapped by the Satanists. The guard noted the address and signaled for help. Papa Midnight failed to kill Constantine. He didn't give up. He continued using spells to find Constantine. On the way to the demon's lair, Jim asked if Jet's psychic abilities were ever wrong. Jet's abilities had never failed, so she didn't want to tell Jim that he was going to die. The full moon had arrived, and it was time to see who would sacrifice themselves to the demon. The 3 carefully entered the house, but the guard was already dead. There was only one way in and out of the place. To find the culprit, they just needed to check the cameras. At that moment, Constantine looked through the door and saw a crow staring at him. He told Jim and Jet to go ahead while he stayed back to handle some things. Sure enough, not long after, Papa Midnight pulled up outside, gun in hand. As he climbed the stairs, he heard a noise, turned and shot Constantine in the chest. Constantine was severely injured. With his last bit of strength, he blamed Papa Midnight for killing him over a paltry bounty, unaware that this would endanger Vesta. But Papa Midnight didn't care. He just needed to kill Constantine to get his sister out of hell, so he had to do it himself. However, when Papa Midnight shot Constantine, Constantine suddenly transformed into the security guard. Then Papa Midnight was knocked to the ground by Constantine. It turned out Constantine had controlled the dead body to defeat Papa Midnight. At that moment, the Satanist had completed the ritual preparations. Vesta, under a magical spell, had agreed to his proposal. Fortunately, Jim reviewed the camera footage and identified the Satanist as the culprit. The three rushed to the scene, hoping to get there before Vesta was harmed. Vesta was strong, and during the ritual, she used her fierce will to escape the Satanist's mental control. She ran outside, screaming for help. By the time Constantine entered the house, the Satanist and Vesta were gone. The three other girls were dead, but their souls were still trapped by the Satanist. Constantine searched the house for the culprit and nearly mistook Jim for the enemy. They tracked Vesta to the garden, her escape route. The Satanist loudly threatened Vesta, but she remained hidden and silent. When he left, Vesta tried to escape but was caught again. Fortunately, Constantine arrived just in time. Seeing Constantine with a gun, the Satanist tried to flee but was stopped by Jim and Jet. Relieved that Vesta was safe, Jet comforted her and took her back to her mother. However, the Satanist was a mentally ill prisoner and might escape punishment due to his condition. Constantine didn't want innocent girls to die in vain. Jim felt the same, so they released the Satanist and shot him. Vesta was terrified by the gunshots. Jet comforted her and took her home to her mother. Later, Constantine stood before the three dead girls and prayed for their souls to be freed. As for Papa Midnight, he was mistaken for the security guard's killer and was arrested by the police. After the case ended, Jet and Jim went to a bar for a drink. Jet told Jim that she had seen his death. Despite hearing this, Jim didn't show much emotion. Jet didn't know how to change things but felt relieved that she could face Jim. Jim calmly said that if fate had decided his death, he didn't want any regrets before it happened. Seizing the moment, Jim confessed his love for Jet, and they shared a passionate kiss. Constantine witnessed this scene, silently smoking a cigarette before leaving, unsure whether to feel happy or sad. Later, as Constantine was looking for a place to use the restroom, Manny unexpectedly appeared and teased him. Constantine replied that he had seen too many bad guys and separated dead people. He just didn't want Jet to witness that. Romantic affairs, he said, were trivial to him. But what happened next surprised everyone. The police car transporting Papa Midnight suddenly stopped. The doors opened automatically, and the handcuffs fell off. The one who rescued Papa Midnight was none other than the angel Manny. Manny declared that he had ended his contract with Constantine. Papa Midnight asked if Manny was working for La Brugella, but the truth was the opposite. La Brugella was working for Manny. Papa Midnight's sister's prophecy had come true. The one to betray Constantine was the angel Manny, which no one had expected. The film ended here. Thank you for watching.